Welcome to Machine Tool Maniacs, the podcast where machining, fabrication, entrepreneurship, and bringing ideas to life collide. Around here, every story is a success story. I'm Matt, a second-generation manufacturer who's been in the shop since I was in diapers, learning the tools, the trade, and the people behind it all. Nearly everything in our daily lives is passed through a CNC machine. And we're here to spotlight the makers turning raw material into reality. Whether you're dreaming big or building bigger, this is your inside track to making it happen. Welcome back to the podcast. I'd like to introduce to you today a gentleman by the name of Brandon Atkinson, and he owns a company called Elevation Machine. Introduce yourself, Brandon.
Hi, everybody. My name's Brandon. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, Brandon and I go way back, and when I say way back, it goes all the way to elementary school, man. We've kind of been flying around the same circles for our entire lives, so we got quite a story, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you think about it, you sit here and you're like, man, all the way from elementary school to, I mean, you worked at my mom and dad's shop for a little bit, and that's kind of how you got your feet wet in the manufacturing industry.
Yep.
And you eventually went to a medical device company, and we'll talk a little bit more about this down the road, but I followed you there, so we kind of did some leapfrogging through our careers. So anyways, welcome to the show. What does Elevation Machine do?
Yeah, so I sell used machines. It's a used machine dealership. Eventually, I'd like to get to the point where I'm selling some new machines as well, but for right now, it's just used equipment.
Mm-hmm. And what do you do? What makes Elevation Machine special? Just we'll talk a little more down the road about it, but just 30,000 foot view.
Okay, yeah, the 30,000 foot view is I am doing things just a little bit differently. I mean, first of all, I had no experience in selling machines before I started this company, so I'm kind of going in, doing it my own way, a little bit differently than other dealers out there, and we could talk more about that later. But it's essentially the general idea is that I'm selling on consignment rather than purchasing equipment and then reselling it. You know, most dealers have a warehouse, and so they'll offer, I don't know, 20 cents on the dollar for a machine, and then they'll take it to their warehouse, they'll sell it, or sometimes they'll sell it off people's floor. But I am working strictly on commission at this point, just doing consignment.
I guess backing up a little bit, go ahead and tell your story about where you got started, where you migrated to.
Yeah. So my first experience in a shop was at your parents' place. I was working at Walmart in the paint division and hated it. And you said, well, we have an opportunity for a deburrer. And I didn't even know what a machinist was. You know, I was one of those idiots that thought machinists work on cars. So yeah, I went into your parents' shop with you and you got me a job deburring, bead blasting, deburring, tumbling, that type of stuff. And that was my first experience with anything manufacturing. But I remember walking in there and it's like, it's an older shop, old equipment. You can smell the coolant.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I just felt like, okay, this is like a real man's job. This is like, this is like a real shop. So that was always pretty cool, I thought.
So that shop, apparently, when Ed Cole, did you ever meet Ed when you were there?
So your parents were just buying the place. Ed still technically owned it when I got hired, but it was only for like a month that he was even around.
Okay. So technically, it was the first shop in Denver to have NC machines.
Oh, wow.
So that shop goes way back, especially in kind of technology.
Yeah, I remember like my second day, I had to clean out one of those old Sabre machines.
Oh,
It looked like
gosh.
it hadn't been cleaned out in 20 years.
Yeah.
So shoveling the chips out. I had chips all in my hair, and I was like, "Oh man, this is filthy," but it was fun.
The
I enjoyed that
smell
stuff.
of that shop is distinct. I still go in there and I'm like, ooh, yeah. But
Yeah.
I've been around that smell my entire life.
Yep.
So how and I don't even really remember. Did you ever get the opportunity to run any machines when in the time that you worked there?
Nope. No, I didn't. It was mostly just deburring and tumbling. We ran those power cases. They were, big square part, and I forget what the machine really even was, but I
It's called a
think it had a big fly
duplex.
cutter in there.
Yeah, that thing
Yeah.
was called it was a Cincinnati duplex, and it had just two like 8 or 10 inch shell mills.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the only machine I ever even operated there. And, all it was is throw those things on the conveyor and hit start.
It was a lot of work, dude.
Yeah. But it was all deburring when I was there.
And
Just
sandblasting.
and sandblasting. Yeah, the bead blaster that would shock you about every 2 minutes. So after a 10-hour day, you just wanted to kill somebody on your way home.
Yeah, I remember that sandblaster. You
Yeah.
like, didn't you like shoot your eye too or something
Yeah.
once?
So the lid, rather than having doors on the side, it had like a lid on the front. And what happened is I lifted the lid up and somehow my foot was still on the pedal and the gun was just laying there on the, like just in the machine, aimed straight at my face. And so I blasted myself in the eye, and I had safety glasses on, but it still kind of went around the safety glasses, and some of it got in my eye, and my eye swelled up, and I had to go to an eye doctor.
Man, yeah, I remember that now, sitting here talking about it.
Yeah, that wasn't a good day.
So from there, you took a little bit of a hiatus from manufacturing.
Yep, I went into construction. Actually, I decided I wanted to learn how to build a house. Worked remodel construction for like a year, and it was awful. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The work I enjoyed, but the situation was awful because I had to use my own truck and drive to the job site. Well, my time wouldn't start till I got to the job site, and this guy would always bid these jobs like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. So I'm burning up all this gas. I was making $8 an hour, and so after like a year, I asked them for a raise. They gave me an 11-cent raise, and I was like, you know what? You need the money more than I do, apparently. So there was a job listed on Craigslist for bead blaster, and it was at a medical device shop called Lanks, and they were paying $13 an hour. And to me, like to deburr for $13 an hour back in 2008, I felt like I was making $1,000,000.
Oh,
Like that.
I remember that, and people probably are out of touch, but man, I remember when 12, $13 an hour was you were going somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And in the construction field, like the team I was working on, the guy who'd been there 20 years wasn't making $13 an hour. And like now construction wages are pretty high. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed in construction, but back then people weren't making any money. So
Yeah.
then to leave and get a $5 an hour raise, that was huge. And so I jumped back into deburring, and it was mostly bead blasting again and tumbling, and then more hands-on deburring, like under a microscope, deburring like bone screws and stuff. It's a medical device shop, so a lot more, or a lot smaller parts, and a little more high precision type deburring than I was used to. So that was a little bit different, but it was fun. So that's how I got started back into manufacturing again.
And how did you start to progress into running equipment there?
Yeah, so after about a year of deburring and doing the tumbling and everything, I was on night shift, and they were getting pretty busy on the screw machines, on the Swiss machines. And the guy who was running the Swiss department, George Deeb, he needed a little bit of help. So yeah, George, good old George Deeb. Everyone knows him in Colorado.
Yeah.
Good
He
dude.
deserves a plug.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he needed a little bit of help, and so he would let me operate. And it was a prototype shop, medical device prototype shop, so we didn't do a lot of high production at all. 10-piece order was a lot, but if he would get the Swiss set up, ready to run 10 parts, I'd go over there when I was done deburring and done bead blasting, and I would run 10 parts. I'd deburr them for him, and I'd leave them for him, and he would check them. And at the time, I knew nothing about machining, right? Like all I knew is I would hit start and a part would come out eventually. That's all I knew at that point. That's how green I was.
Uh-huh.
And so did that for a little bit. And then they got to the point where he wanted like an actual setup guy. And so he gave me the opportunity to learn how to set up the machines. And so that was when I really started going down the machining path. So what would happen is he trained me on touching off tools and everything. I remember seeing an insert for the first time. I had no idea what direction that insert went into this machine. There's tools coming from all different angles in a
Oh
Swiss.
yeah. And
I knew nothing.
this is a Star Swiss, correct?
Yeah, it was a Star, and they had a gang machine and they had a turret machine, so an SR and an SV.
Mm-hmm.
And so he trained me on just how to touch off tools, set the collet, set the guide bushing, really basic stuff. And we started off, he'd give me a setup sheet and I would just touch off the tools for him. I wouldn't touch anything on the program. I wouldn't hit start, nothing. I'd just touch off the tools, set the collet, guide bushing. The next morning, if I did a good job, he would run through the program. If I didn't do a good job, I'd hear about it and then I would fix what I needed to fix.
He was
And
not modest about speaking his mind, and I appreciate that.
yeah, I did too. I respected him a lot. Like you never had to wonder what he was thinking.
No, no.
But he was also the type, like he would yell at, I shouldn't even say yell. Like he would tell you when you did something wrong, but he would also tell you when you did something good. So,
Yeah,
he was an
absolutely.
awesome manager, probably the best boss I ever had.
Yeah, he was good.
So got to where I was doing setups halfway decent. And so he started trusting me to prove out the programs. So I knew nothing about G code as well. Like I am so green at this point still, but he showed me like how to watch on the screen, the distance to go, make sure you're not going to crash, run everything slow. And the stars are nice. They have a rapid knob where you can turn it all the way to 5%. So it's really hard to crash a star. So I would prove out the programs. But the thing is being on night shift, there was only two other guys. One guy ran the lathe, one guy ran the mills. They were both programmers, but they didn't know Swiss. And so if I would run into an issue with the program, I'd have to stop and be like, well, I can't read any of this gibberish. And I'd have to bring these guys over and they'd read the code and they'd be like, well, let's try this. And they didn't know multi-channel or anything. So some of the weight codes and sync codes were a little different to them, but we would usually get through a program. And every time we ran into an issue and they helped me solve it, I would learn. Right. So I'm constantly learning. It's kind of trial by fire the whole time, which was always super stressful for me, but it was the best thing for me by far. Like it was an amazing learning experience.
Going straight to a Swiss for learning, that's major kudos to you, man. That's an animal of a machine for anybody.
Well, thanks. But I almost feel like I was better off going straight from a Swiss than like a lathe guy going to a Swiss because, you're on a lathe, you got tons of room to work. Your Z's are going the right way, for a lathe guy. And and then you get on a Swiss and there's oil everywhere. You're covered in oil. You hate the smell of oil. The Z's are backwards. Your stock is moving instead of the tool. And so I think if I came from a different type of machining center, I would have hated the Swiss, but I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I was just like, this is cool. Like I get to do something, So for me, I didn't really have any reason to hate it because I didn't know what to compare it to, but I ended up liking it. So I prove out programs. I'm starting to learn G code just a little bit. I'm probably like a year in, and it's just getting to the point where it's like, there's no room for an operator or even just a setup guy in a prototype shop. Like that's kind of worthless if you really think about it. And there was a lot of nights where I'd get stuck and I'd have to just go sweep or mop. So they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to start learning part maker. So start programming. And I probably was like, looking back, I was not ready to learn, but I wanted to. So they gave me the opportunity, which was really awesome on their part. And I got to learn part maker. They give me some really simple parts, like a shaft with like almost no milling, just straight turns, really simple parts at first. I would program it. I would set it up. I'd run through it. And of course I made all kinds of mistakes and George would come in like, what are you doing here? Like, this looks like crap, but you learn. That's how you learn, So I started that way. And then eventually you just do so many programs in a prototype shop. I mean, we aimed to do 2 different jobs every week. A lot of times they were simple, but sometimes they weren't. If you think about it, 2 jobs every week would be 100 jobs a year, 100 different programs a year. And I never hit that. I think the most I did in 1 year was like 85 programs. But if you think of like a production Swiss programmer, they're probably an awesome programmer, but they're in a shop where they get to do maybe 2 or 3 new programs a year.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I had such an amazing opportunity to try so many different things I just had to try so many different things because we had so many different jobs come through. And so it was an awesome learning experience for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I share that sentiment with Lanx, and it started as Lanx and became Zimmer Biomet, and or Zimmer, or I don't know. We changed names 8 billion times, but I didn't really. My time there running the Swiss was pretty short compared to you, but I do. Anybody who got the chance to work there and took advantage of the opportunity they had gained a ton of experience, because the blessing of that place was, if you just had the desire to learn to do something, you could do it. So if you
Yeah.
wanted to run the 5-axis mill, or the Swiss, or the EDM wire, or they had a CTX, a DMG CTX lathe. If you wanted to run any of that stuff, they would give you the opportunity to, and they would give you the time to learn. And that was really an amazing experience that, looking back now, truly was a blessing for anybody who took advantage of working there, because, like you say, we gained experience. I mean, similarly to you, I've told that story in the past. I probably programmed more parts in a year than most people program in their entire lifetime, because of the nature of the type of work that we were doing. So
Yeah.
it was just really a cool environment to be in.
Yeah. I mean, you look at other shops now, like me, at least me looking back and going into some of these shops, like these, most people don't have an opportunity like that. And even if you're in a shop that has the capability to let their employees do that, a lot of shop owners won't. Like, there's just a mindset where they don't want to train you up because they're afraid you're going to leave. Whereas, at Lanks, it was like, learn everything you can because we're going to use you in that capacity, and we'll promote you. We'll give you raises. The raises weren't always great, but they still give you raises. It was just amazing. So I see people like spending all this time in production shops where they're stuck as an operator or stuck as a setup guy. And to me, it's like you should either be learning or earning. And they say, both is best, but if it's neither, then quit.
Yeah,
And I would say you should prioritize learning, especially at the beginning of your career. Like, even if you have to take a pay cut to go somewhere, if they're going to promise you the opportunity to learn to program and you've never programmed before, like, take it. Like,
I agree.
seriously, take the pay cut, work a second job somewhere else if you have to, learn as much as you can. And then the money, like, once you're a programmer, then start focusing maybe a little more on money. You get older in life, maybe you got kids or whatever, focus on earning. But at first you should really focus on learning, because you and we just got that experience, and I took it for granted back then. I thought every shop is just going to want you to program and they're going to want you to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
And that's
it's
not the
not like that.
case at all.
No, that's all very good points. I've actually witnessed it myself. I'm not going to name names, but I've been into big corporate entities that have machine shops, and even experienced guys. It's all just so bureaucratic, and, oh no, you can't touch anything. You just load the part and push the button. And if something goes wrong, and
And
yeah,
call the programmer.
yeah, and some of those places pay well. They do. But is that really what you want out of life? You just want to load a part in a machine and take it out for the rest of your life, so it's like you said, I agree with what you said. If you have the opportunity to go someplace and actually learn, even if it comes at the cost of a pay cut, or going and working at a machine shop that maybe isn't as glamorous, but you have more opportunities, do it. And I just to also double up on what you said, you're right. A lot of shops are afraid to train people because they're worried they're going to invest all this time and money into them and they're going to leave. I think they're also afraid because they don't want to spend the time training somebody either.
Yeah, I could see that, especially if you're in a super busy shop. You just don't have any bandwidth to take
Yeah.
someone off of
I
of a
like, hey, I
machine.
need this guy deburring. I don't really have time for him to learn how to new skill, but there's a good balance, and it's a challenge for anybody. trying to find that balance and bring people up and keep them from leaving, because we all know machinists are all divas and they all want to leave every 13 seconds. They are, including myself. All right. But it's just the nature of the beast. It really is. And most shops don't want production or prototype type work. They want high production stuff that they can set up once and run for a year straight. Like that's many machine shops. That's kind of like their dream scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I would say even if you're a young kid or you're just looking to advance, even if you're in a shop where management doesn't want to help you improve, like find the programmer. Chances are he's taking 15 coffee breaks a day anyway. Pull him aside on one of those breaks and be like, hey, teach me how to read G code. Or just point me in the direction of the manual where I could learn to read this. Type stuff like that. You could still learn on the job even if management doesn't want you to.
Yeah, and to be honest, I hear this excuse when I go into shops a lot, like, oh, they don't want me to learn, they won't teach me. I would say more often than not, if you show initiative and you start doing it on your own free time, yeah, if your expectation is that somebody's going to come down and say, here, let me send you to CNC programming school, that's probably not going to happen. But if you
Right.
say, hey, how can I help? What can I help out on? What are you doing over here? Show me what you're doing so I can be of use. Nobody's going to turn that down. So
Yeah.
it's the approach. And the same was true for us at Lanks. We didn't go to CNC programming school. We were basically told, like, well, go talk to that guy and learn from him.
Yeah.
There was
Yep.
no formal education for us. So the expectation that there needs to be formal education is pretty unrealistic. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
those are all very good points. Well, tell us how Elevation Machine got started.
Okay, so while I was at Lanks, it ended up becoming Zimmer Biomet. So they changed names. They're Zimmer Biomet. They have 4 Citizen M20s. Okay. And I won't go into the reasons why we wanted to sell all of them and convert to Tsugami, but we did, right? So we're going to get rid of all 4 M20s. So we call in the dealer. He comes in for, I'm not even exaggerating. He's probably there 5-10 minutes, looks at the machines, and then leaves. And then I get an email. I was a programmer there, and I get an email saying, like, here's a list of pictures we want you to take of each machine. Oh, wipe the machine down first, take these pictures, take these videos, and send them over to the dealer. So I do. And then he lists them. He lists them for 80 grand. I was told he gave the shop 15,000 each. So he's making quite a profit on these. I don't know what they ended up selling for, but he ends up selling them. So the machines never left our facility to go to his warehouse. They left our facility to go to the customer. Before they shipped out, I de-installed them. He had us do it. I blocked them up. Actually, we had shipping brackets for all of them. So I put all the shipping brackets on. We drained the oil. We got everything prepped. He had a kid come in for like a half a day just to pack up some collets and guide bushings and tooling. So he really wasn't there much at all. I'll just say it, he did no work. Okay. We did like everything.
Yeah.
And he had a really good payday. And so that was before COVID, even probably 2017, 2018. And that always stuck in the back of my mind. Like, man, this guy cleaned house on that deal. And he didn't really even have to do much, and I was like, so yeah, I was impressed, but then also at the same time, I felt like we got taken advantage of a little bit because I was like, man, he only gave us 15 grand and then we did all the work. So I thought, there should be a little more of a fair, fair deal rather than do something like this. So anyways, that always stuck with me. Well, then fast forward to like 2021, 2022, I was just like, I was done with cutting chips. I'm like, I'm sick of program. I'm sick of cutting chips. I'm not that great of a machinist. It's just stressful for me. I've lost the love for it. I don't even like you used to I used to struggle with a part and then I'm so proud that I made it. And there's like an adrenaline rush. And now it got to the point where I was like, I'm not even proud of these. I'm just aggravated. So I start thinking like, I want to start a business. So I tried doing Airbnb. We bought an investment property. That was an epic fail. Um, I kept thinking of other businesses to start. I almost started a landscaping company. All I knew is that I wanted to work for myself. That at the end of the day, that's really just what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, never did figure out what I wanted to do. And then 2025 in March comes around, and I hear that at Lanks or Zimmer Biomet, they're going to close down the shop. And I'm thinking, I can't let them sell all those machines for like next to nothing. I want to be involved in this deal instead. I'd rather be the one making the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this opportunity is never going to come around again. I know everybody there. Like I can get the contract to sell this. So I emailed the VP of R&D. His name's Ryan. I'm like, hey Ryan, this is what happened last time you guys tried to sell the Citizens, and I'd like to come in and I'll just sell on consignment. So we'll sell the machines and I'll take a small commission after you guys get paid. That way you get as much money for them as you can. I still make some money. I may have told a white lie and told them I already started a used machine selling company. So I made it sound like it was perfect timing. I just started this company. I hadn't yet. So anyways, he says, well, the shop's not under us anymore. It's under operations. So he sent me this guy, Neil. So Neil agrees to meet with me. I show up to the shop. I tell Neil I started this company and I'm brand new. And I told him, I don't have experience necessarily with this business, but here's my experience from the past. I helped with the Citizens. I did all this stuff. And I said, I'm brand new, but if you give me the opportunity, I would love to take it. And he's like, well, I like supporting small businesses. So we'll give you 3 months. So do what you can in 3 months. We got a lease for another year and a half anyway. So we're not in a hurry to get rid of the machines. So he's like, do what you can. So that night I started my LLC, Elevation Machine LLC. And then the very next day I went to the bank, got a business account, sent over my information to, Zimmer Biomet ended up becoming High Ridge. They change names like every 2 years.
Yeah.
So the company now is called High Ridge Medical. So sent all my information to High Ridge. I got on their vendor list, and in March is when I started the company. So I really didn't have any experience. Like I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into. There's a quote that says, we don't do it because it's easy. We do it because we thought it would be.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
thought, oh, this is going to be simple. Like I've done this stuff before, but there was a lot more to learn. My first big struggle was that when I met with Neil at the very end of the meeting, he said, oh, by the way, we fired all of the machinists except for one. And so we're going to need you to like do the deinstall on every single machine. And I've done it on a Swiss, but like, I know nothing about mills, lathes. They had thrown out all their shipping brackets. So I had to learn how to block machines properly for shipping. And it was like, I was stressed. I was super stressed at the start, but yeah, I got started. So I was thankful for the opportunity.
And for those that are listening to this that possibly aren't familiar, I mean, we're not going to completely throw used machine dealers under the bridge here, because there is an aspect where a lot of them are buying equipment. They'll buy it for pennies on the dollar, and they'll stick it in their warehouse, and sometimes they don't even sell it. So they end up just scrapping it out. So that's kind of the traditional process, where your process is more of you are just trying to sell it off their floor so they don't have to take as big of a hit when they go to sell it. So they're not necessarily selling it for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. If you have a warehouse and you're taking the machines and you got to rig them, transport them to your warehouse, connect them to power, show the machines, you should be only paying 20 cents on the dollar for those, because you never know what the market's going to do and if you will sell that machine. So like I went to another dealer's warehouse last week, actually. And they have stuff that they haven't sold in it looks like months and months and months. And so you need to make sure you don't overpay for that stuff, because you need to be making a profit.
Well, yeah, there's risk for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm in the unique scenario where I don't really have overhead. Eventually I do want the overhead, but I don't have the overhead. So I can work on I could just work on a small commission. So I don't have to take the risk.
Quick pit stop. If you're enjoying the show, hit subscribe and drop a rating. It helps more machinists and makers find us. Tell a friend. Tell your crew. Tell the guy running the second shift. Follow me along on social media at machine_tool_maniac for thoughts, updates, and some funny memes. We're growing this community with more guests, more value, and more stories that push people to create. So if you've got a niche product getting manufactured or a shop with a cool story, email me at machinetoolmaniac@gmail.com or check out the website machinetoolmaniac.com for merch. All right, back to the episode. I think one of the most interesting lessons for me in this process that you had selling off the equipment that we used to run at High Ridge was that Chiron. So
Yeah,
that was for the listeners, this Chiron was it was probably $800,000 brand new back
yep.
in, do you know what year it was? Was it like
It was
2012,
2008.
2013?
I'm pretty
08?
sure it's 2008. Yeah.
So it was a 2008 5-axis German-made horizontal bar-fed mill, kind of like a Williman, if anybody's familiar with those. It was made by a German manufacturer called Chiron. This thing was extremely high-end machine. Epoxy granite castings. I'm pretty sure it had scales on all the axes. Siemens 840D control. Very nice machine. High pressure coolant. Had a bar feeder. Had what else did it have on it?
Yeah. So it also has a coolant filtration system.
Yeah,
And
very
so,
nice coolant filtration system. So
yeah.
this machine originally was 800 grand. And tell the audience, I mean, I don't know if you want to say exactly how much it ended up selling for,
Well,
but
yeah, no, we sold it for 10 grand and we were happy to get that because we thought we were going to have to pay to scrap it. Now the machine was in great shape. It was rebuilt 7 years ago, fully rebuilt. And then the only guy who was running it left. And they thought everyone in the shop was going to just jump at the opportunity to run this machine, but it was Siemens controlled. Nothing else in the shop was. Nobody wanted to learn to run it. So it sat. They tried to find guys they could hire. Nobody came in that could run it. Eventually they got a Micron and they didn't have enough power. So they disconnected power from the Chiron to power up the Micron and people ran that. And so it just sat there fully rebuilt. And when I went to sell it, I looked it up and there was another similar listing for 130,000 for a running one, not rebuilt, but it was fully operational. And this one wasn't technically, it wasn't even connected to power. And for the first 6 months, the company didn't even want to connect it to power. So I'm trying to sell a machine not under power. It's been sitting, but they had put over 100,000 into it during the rebuild.
Yeah.
So I started at 80 because I thought, you know what? It's fully rebuilt. It is still a little bit of a risk and no takers. And so I was dropping the price on machines about every 2 to 3 weeks if they weren't getting any interest. And we got all the way down to 15,000 and some guys like, hey, I'll take it for 10. And I mean, I was just thankful to find somebody who's willing to take the risk on it. And it's going to be an awesome machine for him. He got a $130,000 machine, completely fully rebuilt. It's going to be a little bit to get it back up and running. I think it lost its parameters, but Chiron has the parameters. So yeah, he'll have to probably put, 10 to 20,000 into it, I'm guessing, but then he'll have a $30,000 machine. That's like, it's $130,000 machine really.
What's interesting about this story, and the reason I wanted to tell it though, is because what you pay for a machine or what a machine costs up front doesn't necessarily dictate what it's worth on the back end. Now, you as a manufacturer, if you had a need for that particular piece of equipment, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to sell it on the used market. Because,
Right.
for example, you could buy a Haas for $120,000 and then turn around and sell it on the used market for 60, a couple years later. So it's all relative, and it's interesting to think about and just look how all that played out.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the case of another dealer buying those machines, like that one would be one they'd have to offer like super low. And even then they might take a loss. So yeah, I guess I don't want people thinking that I'm trying to demonize other dealers. I am trying to do things differently than other dealers because I I think there's some scenarios where selling on commission is going to benefit the shop a lot more than selling outright. But I lose out on a lot of opportunities because some shops need to get that piece of equipment out of their shop like yesterday. And so they need a dealer who can come in and move it to a warehouse. And
Yeah.
so that's in those situations, I'm not even competing.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's just important to remember for anybody who might be thinking about selling a piece of equipment, what you paid for it might not necessarily dictate what it's worth on the used market, right? The market
Yeah.
always tells you what stuff is worth. So, with that being said, what is your appraisal process when you go in and try to look at equipment and figure out, well, how much you make recommendations?
Yeah.
What's your
So
process look like?
that has been the biggest learning experience for me. And so we could talk about this part a little later, but if you'll notice, no dealers post prices, right? So when I'm trying to find the price of something, and I spent my whole career on Swiss, like I didn't know what a Haas was worth. I never tried to buy one. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to look online, like how much is a Haas VF2? And I find maybe one outdated listing that showed a price, or maybe one eBay listing, and it's not the same year and it's not the same hours. And so I'm really trying to gauge what the price is based on that. And it's been hard. And what I didn't realize until I started this business is like hours mean almost nothing if it's an old machine. And so a lot of those machines at High Ridge, they were all very low hours. They were pristine because they would wipe those machines down every single Wednesday. The PMs were done every week. So they were in immaculate shape, but they're old. And so I started my prices pretty high. In fact, I had dealers making fun of me for how high some of them were. And they were right, looking back. But I was like, I see a machine, it may be 10 years newer, but it's got 6,000 more hours and it looks like garbage. So I'm trying to price it near that level because I'm like, this thing looks like it came off the showroom floor.
Yeah.
And I just learned, like an old machine doesn't sell for hardly anything compared to newer ones. So evaluating the price on a machine has been tough. Now, luckily for me, High Ridge is the only place I've had to try to evaluate machines because they didn't have anyone there who could do it. I was doing everything for them. Most of the other contracts I've gotten, the owner of the machine knows what they paid for it. They know what they're looking to sell it for. And a lot of times they're still too high, but I don't even argue with them. If they say, hey, this machine, I want $1,000 or $100,000 for it, I list it for $100,000. And if it doesn't sell, eventually we drop the price, or maybe they say, well, then it's not worth selling, and then we just remove it. But yeah, judging the price has been very difficult for me. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm still learning that process.
Which the market will tell you,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we've
Like at
already
High Ridge,
discussed.
I started too high, but I just dropped the price every couple of weeks and eventually you're in the right price range.
Yeah, and so you can take that data and save it and use it for future reference. Now, the one-off equipment like that Chiron or random, oddball equipment, it's always going to be a challenge to try to come up with a price
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
items like that. Um, so what type of equipment, just for the audience, what type of equipment are you specializing in?
I specialize in Swiss. So I know Swiss machines. Like I had one kid, he's not really a kid, he's in his 20s. He's a kid to me. But he started his own shop and he wanted to get into Swiss. He didn't know anything about them. I had a pretty cheap Hanwha that was in really good shape. And so I helped get him involved or get him started on the Hanwha. We got him a good price. I threw in as much tooling as I could. And then once he got it, I sent him some videos like, here's how you touch off a tool. Here's what you want to do for the guide bushing and the call it and the sub call it. I really want to be the guy that people can go to if they have questions about Swiss. And I'd like to be able to, guide customers on that. I'll sell anything. And interestingly enough, I got a contract to sell 4 Swiss machines out of an aerospace shop in Denver. And they also had 9 additive machines. And I don't know anything about additive, but they're like, list them, do whatever you want. And so I listed them. Well, they chose the pricing, but I listed them. And so I've been selling a lot of additive machines. And somehow I think the website I use or the marketplace I use, the algorithm's like starting to send me a bunch of 3D printers. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be getting into the 3D printing space a lot too, which has been great. But yeah, I would say I specialize in Swiss. But
3D printers are because the technology just is outpacing itself so fast. I mean, let's put it this way, a 10-year-old CNC machine, really, you're not sacrificing that much with a
Right.
10-year-old CNC machine. But with a 10-year-old 3D printer, it seems like the technology, at least from my viewpoint, I don't really know that much about them. It's
Yeah, no,
kind of wild.
that's 100% true. So I sold an EOS M280, and I ended up finding out that EOS doesn't even support those machines. They don't make parts for them, nothing. So a lot of people will buy these machines to cannibalize them later and use them for parts. And it was like I think it was a 2012. So it's not even that old,
No.
it's
Yeah.
13 years old. Like that's not that old. And then I have a 3D Systems 3D printer on my website now, and it's older, but it's still in the original crate. It was never used. But since it's an older machine, nobody will touch it. So
That's
yeah,
just crazy.
you're absolutely right. The technology in that space is just advancing so quickly. The or technology becomes pretty much obsolete.
What kind of insights can you give us about logistics and rigging and blocking machines for shipping? And yeah, I mean, you've definitely had some experience around that at this point. So what does that process look like? Because I know, I've thought about buying a small machining, putting it in my garage, and sometimes it can be a little intimidating to look at something that's out of state and think about, oh man, I got to figure out how to get this thing shipped here and get it delivered to my garage or my shop or whatever. So I often find myself, not that I'm seriously looking for something, but I can imagine people are having the similar thought processes as me. I often find myself only looking locally because I'm afraid to buy something that's far away. Do you have any insight
Yes.
about that?
Yeah. So when I first started this, I was actually pleasantly surprised at how cheap it is to ship something across the country. So like I shipped a motorcycle last year to myself from it was in San Diego to Denver, and that was like $600. So I thought, oh, to ship a machine would be like 10 grand. Um, we just shipped that Chiron. Actually, we were just talking about. It's a 15,000 pound machine, and it came with tons and tons of uh, ancillary equipment. It's going to fill up an entire truck, a 53-foot trailer. The whole thing will be full, and that's costing about it's either 3 grand or 3,500 to go from Denver to Wisconsin. Now we also shipped a Swiss from Denver all the way. It was in New England somewhere, maybe it was Pennsylvania, and it only took up half the truck, so the truck was able to fill up the other half, but that was like 2 grand. So it's not really that much to ship a machine across the country. If you think about like, if you're shipping a $200,000 machine, what's an extra 2 grand?
Yeah.
The thing I would say is you definitely want to use Air Ride. So if you call a logistics company that specializes in manufacturing equipment, they'll know that the trailer needs to be Air Ride. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to get you in touch with the logistics company. His name's Cade, and he'll organize it for anywhere in the country. So I can get you his information, but really you'll just want to get in touch with a logistics company that specializes in trucks and go from there. Rigging, you'll have to make sure your riggers are ready when the truck shows up. Rigging in Colorado has been a little tough. There's only a couple companies, and there's only one company I've used, but there's such high demand. These guys are booked like 3 to 4 weeks out. So I would
Yeah,
say
I
call
know.
your riggers too and plan, figure out what their timeline is like, because they may be booked way out too.
Speaking of which, have you ever reached out to them? I know that they got a lot of equipment sitting on their lot. Have you ever talked to
Yeah.
them about helping them sell some of their stuff?
Yeah. So Westside Crane is the company I use here in Colorado, and they just had a guy. He just came back to work, but he had some medical issues, so they were down a crew member, actually a whole crew for a while. But they said that once he's back up and running full time, and they kind of get through some of their backlog, then I'm going to go into their facility, take pictures of all the machines that have essentially been abandoned, and I'll be able to list those.
So coincidentally, I don't know if it's still there. That Saber that you talked about cleaning,
Yeah.
they had that still sitting in their warehouse abandoned.
Oh wow, they should just scrap that thing.
Yeah, they should have just scrapped that. But yeah,
Yeah.
they still got that thing sitting. Uh, I saw it in there. I mean, it's buried. You have to like walk on top of other machines to go see it, but it's back there. It
Yeah,
was. I don't know if it still is. It was quite a few years ago now. It's just funny. That machine's still
that's
floating
crazy.
around.
Well, one thing, speaking about rigging, like if you're even out of the country, we shipped a machine from Denver all the way to Australia. And we had to have a special crate built so that it could just be like loaded with a forklift straight into a container. And it's like it's vacuum bagged and everything. And so to have the crate built, to get a container, we also had to fumigate it at the port and then ship it on a container ship all the way across the world. It was only about 10 grand.
Wow.
So like, yeah, dealing with logistics is really not as bad as I had thought. So I would tell anybody looking to buy something, you know, I definitely wouldn't stress about shipping something across states and even out of the country or from another country. It may not even be that bad.
What gives you a cutting edge coming from a manufacturing background versus somebody who might have just been on the equipment side the whole time and really never understood machines?
So I think there's two things. I mean, first of all, I understand the machines now, and especially with someone coming and looking for a Swiss, you know, I can point them in the direction that I feel is best for them. Like what are their needs? Like, do they need to be pinch turning? Well, then if that's the case, then they need gangs that can move independently, or they need a turret and they need a gang. I've seen some people, they buy like a 38 millimeter gang machine and they don't realize you can only rough and finish in like inch and a half sections, 1 inch sections. And so
Yeah.
they don't realize the benefit of pinch turning. So certain things like that, like I feel pretty confident in my abilities on a Swiss that I could guide somebody as to what would work best for whatever parts they're making. But then also, I would say like being in the shop, we used to look for machines and it would drive me nuts when I'm looking for machines and nobody has prices on anything. So I told myself, like, one thing I'm going to do is I am going to post prices for everybody to see. This machine, they want $100,000. We're posting it at $100,000. You can see it because I got so sick of emailing for quotes because we don't even know if we're in the ballpark for the price that they want, you know. And it's on the selling side, if I'm listing a machine for 100 grand, I don't want people emailing me if they could only pay 50. You know, that's a waste of my time.
Yeah,
You know, so
it's true.
knowing the machines and being able to guide people on maybe the capabilities that they would want, I think is a plus. And then also since I don't have experience in this space, I'm doing it the way I feel like a machinist would want a dealer to work. And so I'm just trying to do things a little bit differently in that regard.
That's a good approach because at the end of the day, that's what you're dealing with is machinists. You know, even many shop owners, a large portion of them, or even the guys just running the shop, were machinists at one point in time. So
Yeah.
that that happens quite a bit. How about as far as machine inspections? Do you have any partnerships worked out with people that can go and look at a machine and kind of give it a oh man, I know what Will's talked about it in the past. You know, like
Yeah.
and just an inspection. So, you know, hey, I looked this through. The ball screws are a little wore out, or this or that.
Yeah, I have a guy. I actually haven't had anyone use him yet, but I have a guy in Colorado I would recommend. But for anybody buying a used machine, you know, if you're buying new, you know what you're getting. You know, it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, you got a warranty. It'll work. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
with a used machine, you don't always know. And so this is a good example is I was selling a Sugami SS38 MH 5-axis, super cool machine. It's got a B-axis head. It's a Swiss machine. It's got a sub spindle, but it's got a tool changer, which is the first machine of its kind to do that. And so it's super, super capable. And I found a buyer and he was really interested. And I knew at High Ridge that machine was making good parts the day they shut it down. And then I also had all of the service records. So I sent him the service records. There was some issues in the past, but I was like, it was making good parts. You know, everything was fixed according to these records. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to come out and inspect it. And so he comes out and he throws an indicator on it and he finds out that the sub spindle is like way out of alignment. And then also the B axis head was slightly out. And so at some point they had crashed the machine. Somehow they were still making good parts. I don't know how, but I would have never been able to know that. And even me trying to do my best due diligence and send him the service records and be as transparent as possible, I just didn't even know that it was bad. So you really want to get eyes on it, whether it's your own or pay Hartwig to come in and inspect a machine, or pay Methods, or, whoever, just to come check it out. It'd probably take them 2 hours. And what is it, $500 maybe for a couple hours? That's
Mhm.
well worth it. So I would definitely recommend everyone inspects a machine. And all you have to do is really listen to the spindle, jog the axes around, make sure it doesn't sound like something's crunching. Do a tool change, do a couple tool changes. You'll pretty much know right away, I think, if something's out, especially if you throw an indicator on some spindles or even on the table. Make sure that that's not out of alignment. You can check everything, I think, yourself.
Yeah, and that is the nature of the beast. There's an inherent risk in buying used machines. I still think when you're first starting out and you're very green starting your machine shop, it's one of the best ways to go, because in the beginning machine uptime isn't as important. Once you have established machine shop and you have customers and they demand that their parts are done, yeah, maybe machine uptime becomes more important, but make sure you're doing your due diligence.
Yeah, I sold a Super Mini. It had like no hours, and it sold it to a kid, and he's got a company called Variable Wallet. Super cool wallet. It's got like magnets, so it's customizable for whatever you need. You can add plates and stuff. But anyway, he came in. He brought his own program in, and I don't know if most shops would let somebody run their own program on the machine, but High Ridge was closed down. So I was like,
Go for it.
run it, dude. So he ran his part on the machine before he bought it. Ran a complete
Man,
part.
that's a good deal.
Yeah.
That's a real test drive.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the marketing side of all this. What have been the challenges there?
So marketing has been a little bit tough. I have kind of found that finding a buyer seems to be easy, because when like someone's looking for a VF2, they're going to Google VF2, and then my website will pop up along with a bunch of other dealers. I can talk about that later, I guess. Um, but finding the buyer seems to be fairly easy. For me, finding sellers has been a challenge. Like this week, I know of a shop that they're selling a couple machines. I called them up. I was like, hey, I'm a dealer. I'm 5 minutes away from you guys. I know you're selling a machine. I would love to help. I just charge a small commission, whatever. I go through my whole spiel. And she's like, we already got a dealer. And I already know he's probably doing, what had happened with us. He's probably giving him a lower offer because he's got to move it to his warehouse and he has warehouse space. And so I'm just finding that if people know the dealers already, they already have a relationship, they're just going to go with them no matter what. And I think this whole industry is going to be big on relationships. So I'm going to have to establish relationships with these people. And the only way I can do that now um, is really social media. So I've been listening to uh, your episodes on social media, and one of the big things I've taken away is that I need to get in front of the camera, like my face in front of the camera, so people can see that this is not just some random entity elevation machine. Like, this is a person. There's a person behind the company. When you call, I'm the one that's going to answer. It's my personal phone that I carry with me all the time. I'm going to pick it up. And I think if people can put a face to the company, then that'll start to build relationship. And so
I
that's what
agree.
I've been trying to work on right now.
I agree. I'm glad you've taken some of my episodes to heart.
Yeah. Tell your wife thank you for the advice.
Yeah, she's the one. She told me the same thing. I just wanted to make memes. I was like, I just want to make memes, babe. She's like, well, memes are cool, but that's not going to do anything for creating a brand. And it's the truth. Like, at the end of the day, memes are cool, but it doesn't really identify you in any way, because
Yeah.
somebody else can make a meme and it couldn't be funny, just as funny as your meme. So
Yeah.
it's not you and it's not your own personal brand. So as fun as memes are, and I'm not going to stop making memes. It's just a good blend, right?
Yeah. Well, I've also been struggling with marketing specific machines because, like I had told you before, I'll get a contract for a machine and I'll go take pictures of it and I'll post it on my site. And a week later, I find my pictures on some random dealer's site. So it becomes a struggle for me, because if someone Googles like a Sugami SS327 and I have it, but they'll see the same exact pictures on 10 different dealers' websites. They're just going to go with the first one that pops up, and it's probably not going to be mine because I'm new. So that's been a struggle too. So now I'm to the point where I just watermark all my pictures and everything, but I'm really trying to cut down on other dealers taking my pictures. I've found that the reason people don't post prices is because these dealers all want to work together. So, they want to be selling everyone else's machine, but that makes it difficult if you post a price, because if somebody Googles a machine and they see one with a price and one without, then you can't really upcharge. Like if I'm posting my list for 100 and he wants 120, they're gonna be like, no.
He wants some meat on that bone so he can make his cut.
Yeah. So they're really upset. Like I've had dealers annoyed with me that I'm posting prices. They've called me and they're like, it's really tough to work with you on a deal because you post your price. But I'm like, but my customers want to see a price, and then on the other end, the marketing or the marketplace that I use, if you post a price, they bump your ad to the very top. So I'm like, well, of course I'm going to post a price to get my machine to the very top. I need some sort of edge. And so that's what I'm doing. That's part of my edge. And I want to get my customers the most exposure possible. So of course I'm going to do that. But it has been a challenge.
Well, just outgrow all of them.
Yeah.
And put them all out of business.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have a website. Is that's your primary like selling marketplace, kind of where people can view your what you have?
Yeah. So my website will have everything, that all of my inventory on it. It's elevationmachine.com. But I would say that's probably not where most people are finding the machines. So my website is built by a company called Equipped. So you can go to equipped.com. They also build websites. But if you pay for the website and you pay for a pro subscription, then all your listings go to the front of their marketplace. I pay for, it's called priority placement. I'm a pro member with them. So my stuff goes to the very top. So if you really want to get the most exposure, you use any dealer. I'd love if you used me, but you can use any dealer. You're going to get your listing more exposure. There's also machinetools.com. They're like partnered. And so if you pay for placement on one of them, you get discounted placement on the other. So I'm mostly on equip.com and machinetool.com. I would say 80% of my traffic is from there, but then I'm also getting quite a bit of traffic from Instagram and Facebook Marketplace, which is, I didn't even want to start a Facebook. In fact, to get a contract, they required me to start a Facebook, and I was like so pissed about it. But I was like, fine, whatever, I'll start a Facebook. And I started Facebook, and then of course you get access to Marketplace, and that's been huge. So that's been a huge blessing, actually.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty much the only reason I even have a Facebook still. I do not like Facebook, but Marketplace still has its gold. Like Nicole and I were talking in our episode recently about how it's not really social media anymore. It's interest-based media. And this ties in perfectly with what you're doing, because what are you doing? You are advertising or marketing or giving people an online space, which is their interest in starting a machine shop or looking at used equipment or maybe thinking about selling used equipment, a place to come and view your stuff. So the social media aspect is, in my mind, critically important. And the equipped page is just kind of a landing spot for people to actually go view a listing, and maybe contact you as well.
Yeah.
But definitely in this market, it seems that social media is definitely, or maybe not so much like we said, it's not social media, it's interest-based media, but that's really going to be the main driver of things like this moving forward.
Yeah. In fact, I've had two lenders reach out to me. They want to partner with me. So if you need lending, now I'm partnered with someone, but they both found me on social media, and they both said, we work with other dealers, and no one's really that active on social media. Everyone has a page, but no one's active. So when they told me that, I'm like, okay, I need to be active. I need to be a lot more active on social media than them. And so I've been trying. And like I said, you guys' episodes have given me a lot of good insight. So that's been really nice.
Yeah, and there's a couple of them. I'm sure you follow them as well. But
The one that seems to pop up for me is Revelation Machine. He seems to be everywhere on social media. I don't know if he's paying for ads or what, but I see him quite a bit.
Machine Tool Emporium, do you follow that guy?
Uh-uh.
I think he's over on he's on one of the coasts,
Okay.
but he's a little better about actually being in front of the camera too. So definitely maybe check him out and just kind of get there's meat on the bone for everybody, and that's the
Oh
thing,
yeah.
right? Everybody acts like it doesn't need to be a competition. It can be there's plenty of room for everybody.
Yeah. In fact, I worked with a couple dealers on a couple deals. There's, let's see, 4 or 5 machines I've sold so far, and other dealers have reached out and they've bought the machines from me. And so it's, you definitely don't want to make a lot of enemies because it's such a small group of people and everyone talks. And so I'm happy to play nice.
Well, any advice for machinists and entrepreneurs?
I would say bite off more than you can chew and then figure out how to chew it. I
Mhm.
like when I started this thing with High Ridge, I was so stressed the first couple weeks. I mean, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping because I was like, how am I going to learn how to deinstall all these machines? How am I going to learn how to block them all up? How am I going to find trucks? Like, how am I going to get rigging in here all the time? It was just like when I first took on the contract, I guess I didn't realize what all went into it. And then immediately when I got the contract, I was like unpleasantly surprised what I had gotten myself into. And I thought I was just going to fail miserably. I was like, so what I did, I just worked as hard as I could, nights, weekends. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Chat GPT, just trying to learn everything I needed to learn, calling people. So, whatever you decide, what company you decide you want to start, just do it. And then you're going to run into challenges. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. Just jump in, bite off more than you can chew, and then figure out how to chew it.
Have you stayed in touch with anybody who's bought a machine from you and started their own shop?
No one that has started their own shop. The only one that started their shop was that Variable Wallet. I believe he's the only one that bought his first machine from me. But I have kept in touch with some other people who have bought from me. Some of them are on social media, so we talk on there quite a bit. Another guy, Hamski Archery, they bought they bought 3 Tsugamis from me, and they called me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, we might need another machine, so keep an eye out." So I'm building some relationships with these people and trying to keep in touch because that's at the end of the day, that's the fun of it, right? Like meeting new shop owners, meeting people, seeing what they have going on. And then, if I could provide them with a machine, cool. But really at the end of the day, I just like seeing their shops. I like meeting new people in this space.
I've been on the distribution side of this industry for going on 8 years now. And I really like being on the relationship side of it and just checking up on people and seeing what they're up to and seeing their cool projects. It's so much fun. So
Yeah.
I do really like this side. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when buying used equipment?
Not checking them out. I mean, I've had a couple guys just like take my word for the fact that the machines are good, and I believe they were, and I shipped them the machine. They haven't complained or anything. But like I said with the other scenario, like I thought that machine was great and the sub spindle was out of alignment. So you just never know. I mean, it's not like I'm inspecting every machine that I list. I don't go spend 4 hours indicating everything. So you really need to get your hands and your eyes on the machine or have someone you trust look at it. And then at least you'll know what you're getting yourself into. We did find a buyer for that Tsugami, and they were okay with the sub spindle being out of alignment and the B axis being out of alignment because we cut them a discount on it, to cover the repair. If you know what you're getting into, you know how much you're going to have to put into it. It could still be a good deal, even if it
Yeah.
needs a few repairs.
Well, not to
You just
mention, I
need to
think
know.
that machine was probably over $500,000 new.
Yeah,
So,
it was like 489. I think they paid. Yeah, and we
okay.
sold it for like 30% of what it was. So
Yeah. So you do get the opportunity to get some really nice stuff. It just comes with the risk.
yeah.
What do you think the future is for the manufacturing space and I guess globally, but more specifically in our country and even our region?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting time. The tariffs, they're for, like them or hate them, the tariffs are bringing manufacturing back. I mean, GM announced like a $4 or $5 billion plant. NVIDIA's coming. Apple's building a plant. So manufacturing is coming back. I think my worry is that there's not going to be enough skilled machinists to fill those jobs. So being AI what it is, I don't think AI is to the point where it can take over some of these jobs quite yet. We'll see what happens in 2 to 3 years. I think what will end up happening is that AI will replace the lower skilled individuals, and there's always going to be a need for the real high talent machinists.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out, I guess, over the next 5 to 10 years. But I do think manufacturing is coming back. I mean, people are sick of China wrecking everything. I've worked at a couple shops where they send a bunch out to China, and they get parts for dirt cheap, but then only 50% of them's good, and there's some industries that can handle that, and it's still worth sending stuff to China for that. But a lot of industries, you can't have that type of fallout and still be profitable. So
not only that, but you run the risk of shipping faulty products out, and then the fallout from just that.
Oh yeah, the customers
having to do some kind of massive recall or just tarnishing your reputation. It is remarkably easy to damage your reputation by putting out a bunch of junk, and that is the risk you run. And I've seen some of the stuff that comes out of China too, and been like mind-blowingly impressed at how nice it is. I'll be like, wow, this is actually pretty good. But
yeah, so I did some side work at an aerospace shop, or no, it wasn't even aerospace. It's just a fitting company. And I think the bolts were for some automotive parts, whatever. But we couldn't even get the material for the same price that they were making them in Taiwan, complete and shipped to the US. I don't even know how that happens.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So situations like that, maybe you still go overseas. But years ago, when we were both at Lynx, there was a big fiasco. All medical device companies had to stop making stuff in China because they were using bad titanium. So there was these bone screws that were breaking in patients' backs because the titanium was porous. And so I think the FDA started saying that you needed to make all titanium in the States, or maybe there was some special certs everyone had to go through, but it was a big deal for medical device companies probably 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So you need to have high quality control over your product. And I just don't think China can provide that. So I'm hoping more manufacturing comes back to the States.
Well, do you have any additional closing thoughts or wisdom you'd like to give the audience?
Nope. I would just say, if you're thinking about starting your own company, do it. It's stressful, it's hard, but I will say, like, an easy day working for someone else, I'm just miserable. But a really hard day working for myself, putting in 12 hours, deinstalling a machine, being completely covered in chips and oil, and being exhausted, I feel better at the end of the day because I'm doing something for myself. I'm building my own dream rather than building someone else's. And if that's the way you're leaning, just jump in. Just start it, even if it's a side gig. Like, I wasn't going to bring this up, but this is still my side gig, and I'm working hopefully in the next few months to make it my full-time gig. But you know what? Some people, when you start out, you need to do a year or two just doing it on the side, building it up until you can finally jump ship.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and let the audience know where they can find you.
Yeah. So my website is elevationmachine.com. You can find me Elevation Machine on TikTok, same on Instagram. And then Facebook, you can look up my name, Brandon Atkinson. I'm on there. And then, that's pretty much it.
Well, sweet, man. Well, thanks for joining us today. And we'll probably do another episode in the future. It'd be fun to kind of touch base maybe in a year or two, see how many more machines you've sold. Maybe you're sick of it by then.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah, take care.
Bye.